This is On the Sidelines with Fox 13.
All right, welcome back into the On the Sidelines podcast. I am your host, Ethan McReynolds, here as always with my partner in crime, Ethan Dante Jaxon, and welcoming back a very special guest, our sports digital content producer and reporter, Curtis Crabtree, our sports expert extraordinaire. Curtis,
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming back
No
on.
problem, guys. What's going on?
Yeah, a lot of fun. We have a lot to talk about on this podcast. We're on YouTube. We're on the Fox Local app. We are wherever you get your podcasts, so wherever you're listening to us from, we greatly appreciate it. And we got a lot to talk about today. We're going to be starting out with some Seahawks. There's always stuff to talk about with the Seahawks. A very interesting offseason they have ahead of them. We're going to dive in deeper to the Seattle Mariners. Spring training games underway. Curtis with a wealth of knowledge on the baseball front. He's at almost every single home game pretty much throughout the summer. And then Curtis, we can't have you on without talking about Kraken. And they are in a very interesting spot as we creep up towards the trade deadline as well. But guys, let's start with the Seahawks. Curtis, we haven't been able to talk Super Bowl with you yet. You talked with Dante and Austin before the Super Bowl and gave us a very in-depth preview of the game. It sort of played out how you thought it was going to, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was trying to get across at the time, like, let's say there's 100 possible ways this game could go. Like, 93 of them were going to result in a Seahawks win. Like, there was a very small kind of path that the Patriots needed to have the game go for them to have a chance in that game, and it didn't go down one of those paths. I think it pretty clearly went the way that I thought it was going to, where they weren't going to be able to block the defensive front. There was probably going to be a turnover forced from a fumble for Drake May, and I thought the scoring would be a little bit more linear. Like, it took until the later stages of the game for the score to start actually going, but like in general, the game played out almost a carbon copy of what I was thinking it might do going into that game. And so I certainly wasn't surprised by it. And it felt very much like the Week 18 game against the 49ers, where it was like, oh, this team just can't score today. Like, they're not going to score. So, like, as long as you don't give them the chance to score, it was going to be game over. And that was basically what played out.
Well, with this team, saw how they dominated. So, except for the Rams, they pretty much dominated most of the teams on their schedule. With that, you have a lot of free agency questions that come up, and there is a long list of guys that contributed to this squad that are out of contract. First name that pops up on everybody's list, Kenneth Walker, the Super Bowl MVP, couldn't really have done more to increase his stock in the free agent market. Do you have an indication? What's your gut tell you? Do you think the Seahawks can make something work with Ken Walker?
I mean, they definitely can. Like, there's all the funds available there for them to do it, but it's a matter of if they want to go to that number and feel comfortable with where it gets to. That's where I think they might be a little bit more hesitant, and we'll see what the landscape kind of looks for them with them being in Indianapolis for the Combine this week. This is where, even though everybody says it can't happen, where all the back kind of talking and communication with agents and other teams go about, who's going to be available, what's the numbers going to look like. All of those things kind of come into greater focus during the Combine week when everybody's at the same place at the same time. So it's like the top of the market is Saquon Barkley at $20 million and Christian McCaffrey at $19 million. I mean, we're not talking that range to me. We're talking more in the mid-teens, where I think you would have to look for Ken Walker. One, because he doesn't carry like an exceptional amount of touch load, and he hasn't done it in the regular season to like an explosive level like those couple guys have and Derrick Henry have. So I think we're talking the next tier down. But yeah, going into free agency still, like, yeah, he couldn't have done anything more with that postseason kick to kind of get him to as much value as possible going into this point in his career. That's exactly what you want for a running back, a position that gets churned through pretty quickly in the NFL. To hit free agency at the peak of your value, he'd be doing himself a disservice to not try to get every dollar he can on this contract.
Well, do you go to free agency or if you're the Seahawks, do you give him a chance to go to free agency, or do you try to get a deal early in the process? Do you say, hey, go see what your price is, see what somebody else will pay you, and then come back and give us that price? Do you take that chance of losing Ken Walker, or do you lock him up early, Curtis?
I don't think, if you're Ken Walker, you've gotten to free agency now. I think unless he's getting that Saquon or Christian McCaffrey contract, I wouldn't say yes to anything right now. Like, nothing's going to change on the value standpoint. Go to market, see what you're going to get. And I think if you're signing early, it's probably taking, a discount from what you possibly could get. I just don't see the reason for Ken to do it at this point. Seattle certainly can try. I just don't think they're going to be able to offer him much at this point that's going to be able to get close to getting a deal done.
Well, John Schneider spoke to the media yesterday at the NFL Combine. He talked about Kenneth Walker, was asked about him. Here's what he had to say.
We'd love to have Ken back. It's and he knows this better than anybody. It's about our 70, and our collective and what that's going to look like, and we'll have those meetings down here. We'll start talking to all the agents and we'll have a better feel where we're going here towards the end of the week. But obviously, we'd love to have everybody. We want to have everybody back. Right when you get done with something special like that, you're like, let's run it back. It's going to be an interesting process.
So Schneider keeping it sort of down the middle, what you would expect. We want to bring all of our guys back, but he's bring up a fair point of it is about the entire 70-man roster, right? I mean, as much as you want to bring back Kenneth Walker and you have maybe that emotional connection to him as a guy that was a significant contributor to bring you your second Super Bowl in franchise history, if the number goes up past a certain threshold, your hands are sort of tied at a certain point, right?
It is, because you have the contracts with Jaxon, Smith-Njigba, and Devon Witherspoon looming this offseason that are going to be something they're going to need to get done. That can be back burner because there's not the time crunch there is with the free agency side of things, but that's something that's looming out there and everybody knows it is. And so they have to keep the funds available to take care of those guys when they get to doing those contracts. A lot of times those will happen like in the lead up to training camp. I think it was when I would kind of think that contract might happen sometime during OTAs. I could see, but those are going to be big numbers. With Jaxon and Devon, you're talking probably $30 million plus a season. So now it's not going to hit their cap significantly in year one. It never does, because you can set the way that hits the cap hits kind of come down the line. But still, that's going to be a significant contribution for the future that you're going to have to work around. So those are going to play into your discussion. So let's use Rashid Shaheed as another option, another example. Mm-hmm. Rashid really liked his time here. Made it clear when he got here this is a place he saw himself being for the future and all of that. That being said, he didn't produce much as a receiver during his time here. The returning contribution was massive, and there's no doubt that he was an impact player for them. But if he starts getting into the $15, $16, $17 million a year range too, when you've already committed to bringing Cooper Kupp back by holding on to him through his when his contract I think had 9 of the 12 million guaranteed here about a week ago or so. You've already indicated that you're going to be bringing him back, and I just don't know if you're going to have enough there to have Jaxon on a massive contract, Cooper Kupp on his sizable contract, Shaheed on a decent sized contract, and then have everything else that you want to get done kind of map out. So it's all with a salary cap league. It all comes, you're pulling from somebody else to pay this person here, and you got to make sure everything kind of lines up okay to where your team is as well rounded as you can get it to be. Well,
and we're talking about a lot of positions away from the football, not in the trenches as well. I mean, you're talking about JSN and Devon Witherspoon up for extensions the year next year. We're going to be talking about Byron Murphy, who's going to be demanding some big money the year after that. Gray Zabel. So you also have, I know that we're looking very far into the future, but money that you would probably want to spend in the trenches on the offensive and defensive line that at the moment we're talking about a lot of guys that are off the ball.
Yes, but a lot of guys will cycle out there. They've committed to Cooper Kupp for this year. I wouldn't see him back for the year after this. Mm-hmm. There's some wonder if DeMarcus Lawrence is going to stick around and play this season. Leonard Williams, how much longer does he want to play? Mm-hmm. So at the same time, there's going to be guys that cycle out of their bigger contracts that come off the books to where you then have the ability to backfill that with your bigger contracts for the guys you are paying on the come up. So that being said, in the same situation, let's say Sam Darnold has another really good season. A year from now, you're going to be looking to pay a quarterback a top dollar contract if you want to keep him in that role too. So that's kind of it all. There's one thing after another kind of coming down the road, and you kind of got to figure out the best way to map that out.
Now, but the salary cap is going up.
It is.
So
but it goes up for everybody. So all the contracts go up, yeah.
So that's my point. So if the going rate for a top-notch running back is $15 million last year, this year's $15 million is not the same because the salary cap went up. So you can pay Ken Walker a little bit more simply because the salary cap went up, and JSN being the same boat. Devon Witherspoon also. So with the salary cap going up year to year significantly, yesterday's price is not today's price. $14 million for a running back is not the same as the next year, $16 million with that cap going up. What would you say to that?
Yeah, and I mean that's why I don't think the Seahawks should balk at paying either Jaxon or Devon, what they're capable of getting top of the market sort of contracts, because it's going to be less than top of the market value very shortly. Just with the way these things kind of progress. Being the highest paid player doesn't mean you're the best player at the position. It means you timed out your contract to get it at the right time. And I don't, maybe Jaxon doesn't surpass Jamar Chase for like average annual value, but he gets in the ballpark of it. Either way, I don't think I would hesitate much giving him anywhere near that market, because what is he, like 23 too? These guys are young. They haven't had injury issues. I think I think the sooner you pay them, the better.
I understand what everybody's saying about pay him, but I balk at that. Let me push back at that, because Jaxon Smith-Njigba has 1 year, and I love him. He has 1 year of great production. You're talking about a Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, who was a late-round pick, who produced from day one. They hit an NFL field and has been Pro Bowl or All-Pro from day one. So they have 3 to 4 years of experience and production there, whereas I would say JSN has a year and a half. Do you pay a player, and the same with Ken Walker, who has a playoff? We saw him for 4 years. Do you pay a player top dollar for 1 year of production, 1.5 years of production, a playoff of production? And I'm talking about elite production, of course, because they all were productive players. But do you pay that player top-notch money?
This is where the eye test part comes in. Like, there's nothing I saw from him this season that didn't suggest he's one of those guys. Like, the issue was that in year one, he had an anchor around his leg called Shane Waldron.
A shackle.
That had him playing, he was just
bubble
a screen
screens
merchant.
and wheels.
And then, the little pushback I'll give you to that, he still had 100 catches and 1,100 yards a year ago, like in year two. And now he's had this jump in year three. So I think that's two pretty massively productive seasons that he had to kind of let you know he is who he is. So, and then you throw in the personality part of it too. Like he's exactly the type of person you love to have in your locker room. All of those things. I think there's zero with him. There's zero red flags to me. I think you're never going to get in trouble paying your best players.
Okay. It's
the next tier of guys where you overpay to keep somebody, where you start to get things out of whack a little bit. Like if your top players are getting your top money, you're fine there. You got to find the value in the next couple tiers to where you're able to round out your team around them.
I like that.
Is there anything to be said, though, to be dedicating too much cap space to guys off the football? I mean, I feel like, the Seahawks – in the Pete Carroll days, when they got into trouble, there's a lot of money going to DK Metcalf and other guys that aren't in the trenches, and then you're trying to sort of fill stop gaps a little bit. You have a lot of young talent there, and you got some veteran guys who are going to be moving off the books into Marcus Lawrence and Leonard Williams. But with JSN and Devon Witherspoon, those are going to be two massive contracts. Is it going to take up too much cap space?
Well, I mean, I don't. In the same argument, when it comes time, I don't think they're going to have any issue deciding we're going to pay Byron Murphy too. They've already given contracts to Charles Cross and Abe Lucas, so your cornerstones on your offensive line are already taken care of, and you're getting by with your starting center this year is an undrafted guy. Like you're still finding your value on the offensive line too. Anthony Bradford, with his ups and downs, like when he's good, he's very good. When it's bad, it's ugly. Yeah. But that's a mid-round pick there. So like you're gonna have to make your sacrifices somewhere. And in general, I agree. In general, I think you do want to make sure you focus on the inside. But I think when the time comes around for them to do more of those deals, you're going to have Lawrence and Williams theoretically off the books too, to be able to dedicate the contract load that they were carrying to these other guys. Like if it goes from the DeMarcus Lawrence contract hands over to Byron Murphy, you're fine there, and you're still addressing it, and you have to still backfill with your draft picks and hit them to kind of keep the whole thing going in the long run anyway.
We need to move on, but I wanted to ask you one last question. The list of key contributors on the Super Bowl roster that are free agents. You got Ken Walker, Boye Mafe, Reek Woolen, Josh Joe, Rashid Shaheed, Kobe Bryant. We talked about a couple of those guys, but if you had to prioritize a few that we need to get this done, who would those guys be? And then you can't keep all of them. So, I mean, you mentioned Sheed and maybe we've talked about Boye Mafe as being guys that maybe you got to let go. Where do you sort of sit on prioritizing those six?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm not giving Boye a second contract myself. Like I think Derek Hall, like between the two of him and Derek Hall, I like Derek Hall's game
Well, and
better.
also does DeMarcus Lawrence's, Brady Henderson, and you just mentioned like potentially he doesn't come back this year and ends up retiring. Does that factor into
that would at least
anything?
make me consider it slightly.
With Boye.
Yeah, with Boye. But like in general, like I said, you get in trouble when you pay the wrong guys in the next tier too much. And to me, like Boye is a nice player to have. I don't know that I go out of my way to sign him. Just with what he brings, I think you can get it in other ways. And they carried two undrafted rookies this year in Jared Ivey and Connor O'Toole the entire season long on the active roster because they didn't want to risk losing them by putting them through to the practice squad. And that makes me think that they believe in those guys and want to give them a chance in those roles. And you're going to have to take your chances on some of those decisions elsewhere. And they have a year of time of seeing them in practice and liking what they see from them to where I think that might be the route they go down there. The cornerback situation I think is interesting because I know they were really frustrated with Reek Woolen at times. Josh Jobe is also a free agent too. I would think they might try to get Jobe done at a little bit of a lesser deal and see where that goes. And then Kobe Bryant has played great when he's been out there. Ty Okada played great too when he played. So that may allow you to think that you can move on from him and be okay. But it all depends on where these contract numbers hit. There's going to be a range where it makes sense to bring him back. It's if it creeps up a little too high for you to do so. Yeah, and being the Super Bowl champion, they're going to be in demand.
Yep, a little bit of that extra Super Bowl tax right there. So to me, very interesting to see how John Schneider handles this whole free agency class as they move forward and try to get to another one next season. Let's go on to the Mariners, another team with championship expectations. It's going into this spring training, it feels so different than the past because it feels like anything less than a division title and at the very least an appearance in the ALCS. And maybe other fans have higher expectations, but I'm sort of trying to generalize here. Anything less than a division title and an ALCS appearance would sort of feel like a failure for this team. And we're in spring training. This isn't past the trade deadline when we know what this team looks like. I mean, this is preseason expectations. When was the last time we had expectations this high for the Seattle Mariners coming into a season?
2002.
Over 2 decades.
Yeah, something like that.
It has been forever.
I mean, there was years where there was a thought that this team was going to push through. Like when they made the Eric Bedard trade, maybe they were on the cusp of being able to join that next group. Didn't happen. When they go get Cliff Lee to join their group,
Right.
maybe and it never kind of came together like this because everything is there this time around. So yeah, outside of the coming off the 116 win season, you probably didn't have the thought that this was the type of ceiling you had for a roster, but they certainly do.
Well, and they added, the Cliff Lee acquisition. You remember the Robinson Cano big signing. There's a lot of hype and excitement before season.
I remember when they traded for Jeff Weaver to bring him in, thinking he was going to be a big part of things. And
I purged that from my memory.
Yeah.
Those are some crazy moves. But Dante, I mean, they were 8 hours away from a World Series appearance. They go out and re-sign their cornerstone of their lineup in Josh Naylor. They go out and get Brendan Donovan, and they go out and get a bullpen arm in Jose Ferrer. I mean, it's one of the more active off seasons they've had in a while, as close as they were to a World Series.
Yes, and they should. It's championship or bust. Make no mistake with this organization. And I think the fans have demanded that from the Mariners. The question is, can they play with expectations? Can they still have that chip on their shoulder because baseball is such a long season? Can they have that chip on their shoulder? Can they play with the pressure of being expected to win? Not an underdog, not a good story, beating teams when they wasn't supposed to. No, they're penciled in as the favorites to go to the World Series this year, the American League representative, and they have to play with that pressure. Can they do that? That is the big question.
Well, and I feel like, Curtis, they sort of showed a little bit of answering the call last year with the expectations they had on them after the trade deadline, right?
Yeah, and on top of that, they've still almost all of them have the sour taste of Game 7 still hanging over them, of motivating them to kind of try to get back there too. So.
And that's what I mean by the chip on their shoulder.
Yeah, for sure.
Losing so late.
To come that close. Like, I mean, I was in that clubhouse in Toronto after Game 7. And it was a quiet place as you would expect. Like, they were very devastated that it went the way it went. And I most people don't care about this. Every single one of those guys that took part in that game talked about it in the moment too. Like I give them a ton of credit for that. Cal, Bizzardo, Julio, all of those guys. So, I mean, you remember hearing Julio's visceral scream from the back of the clubhouse when we were talking to Brian Wu after that game. So they felt it, they wore it, and they still believe they're a very good baseball team, and have every. I would be shocked if any one of them doesn't think they have the ability to get back there this year and compete to get to the World Series.
Well, and I feel like most teams have the belief that they are a very good baseball team in spring training, but on
most
paper,
are delusional.
Most are delusional. The Mariners absolutely back it up on paper. I mean, Curtis, look at this lineup. We showed this last week on the podcast. This is what their lineup could look like. Will probably look something very similar to against right-handed pitching. I mean, you got 7 to 9 guys with OPS pluses above 100. And I know that's taking into account Canzone's sort of inflated numbers for half of a very good season. But, I mean, putting Brendan Donovan into that leadoff spot, I feel like is a game changer. Having another gritty at-bat in there to join Josh Naylor and his gritty at-bats, J.P. Crawford potentially in that 8-9, probably in that 9 spot to flip the lineup. There's a lot of guys that are going to cause pitchers a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, Canzone, I think, might be DH more often than not, so Robles can play defense and right field. Rob Refsnyder, we know he can hit lefties very, very well.
Awesome against
as
lefties.
a nice, counter in that lineup when they face left-handed pitching too. Like, to have Naylor behind Cal Raleigh for a full season is just going to be such a change,
Yes.
A game-changing kind of piece there, because we saw how big of a deal that made for them in the postseason run. Now, I mean, Naylor was about as nuclear hot as he could get over that stretch, so maybe he isn't able to sustain that the entire 162 game schedule and everything. But like they got him done early in the offseason. They knew they needed to sign him. They ponied up and did it. I think that you got to give them a lot of credit for that.
Yep.
They didn't make that mistake. It was very straightforward, but they got it done and did it. And it makes that lineup so much better. And then they waited for months and months for St. Louis to figure out what the frick they were going to do with Brendan Donovan there, because that was a discussion going on for a long time, and I think they were a little bit confused as to what St. Louis was trying to get there. I think their offer had been on the table for a while and finally got across the finish line. So, yeah, him being at the top of the lineup just makes everything that much longer. You don't have Randy up there free swinging out of the leadoff spot all the time like he was down the stretch. Everything on paper looks very, very good for them. In addition to the fact you might have Cole Young take a step forward, Colt Emerson, I think at some point is going to play games for them this year, and we'll see kind of where things go from there. And they still should have the ability to go out and add one more piece at the deadline if they need to kind of augment the roster for a stretch run again.
But one thing that we didn't picture here was the rotation.
Well, I was just about to get to him, but please do. Yes.
I mean, pitching wins championships just like defense does in football. I mean, you have to have healthy pitching. So that's one thing that's not pictured. We didn't see there on that graphic. And I would love to know if this staff can stay healthy for a complete season. And that was the problem last season. I thought right around the playoffs, you lose your best pitcher in Brian Wu, and I thought that loss was huge and probably was the reason why the Mariners didn't go to the World Series. They had their best pitcher was out in Wu, so and he came back, but he was a shell of himself. So I love the lineup. Don't get me wrong. The Mariners got there last year with a lesser lineup. It's the pitching that will put them over the top.
Well, I feel like the bigger problem last season with the pitching injury. Yeah, Brian Wu was a big hit in the playoffs, but it was having George Kirby miss all of spring training. It was having Logan Gilbert miss time at the beginning of the season, and
Bryce
those guys
Miller wasn't healthy.
Bryce
He
Miller
was dealing with the bone spurs in his elbow, where he wasn't pitching like Bryce Miller until the playoffs, and then he was healthy and was great.
Yeah, but I mean, it was them not being able to get into their rhythms throughout the entire season. So you see the numbers; they're more of a league average starting rotation than.
And they still won 90 games with
it. They were still absolutely incredible in the regular. But I mean, Curtis, expectation wise for this starting rotation, if you can get any more health than you did last season, get any more production from them to supplement a full season from Josh Naylor, a full season from Brendan Donovan at the top of the lineup, along with the superstars in Cal Raleigh, who probably won't hit 60 home runs again, but he'll still be an incredible piece in the middle of that lineup. Julio Rodriguez. I mean, we're talking about maybe the team being even better than they were last season.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of Julio, what if he gets out of the gates hot, which he has never really done? He's always been like a second half all-star, where he's really kind of soared in the back half of the schedule. What if he gets that thing going from the outside of the season? You could really, I mean, if Julio can do that from day one, he might be an MVP candidate, at the end of the year.
He's been a top 3 MVP guy with just having the hot second halves.
Yeah, I mean, and everybody, as bad as Julio's first halves are, they're still like an OPS plus of like 106 or something. Like,
it is a career 737 OPS. In the first half.
It's a plus average. When he's struggling,
and 900 in the second half.
And
you can deal with a 737 in the first half. You got 900 in the second.
Exactly. So like, I think he's a little bit more settled into his career. I'm really curious to see if he gets out of the gates a little bit hotter this year. I think he understands his game and where he's at a little bit more. At this
I'm
point.
gonna disagree about the 9 and the 700 and the OPS because those wins in April mean just as much as those wins in August. And as a matter of fact, I would say that it means more because you gain that momentum. You have to start this season hot. You have to start this season with wins if you're the Mariners. You cannot wait till the second half to start winning games and create that pressure, more pressure than you already have on the Mariners. You can't do that. You have to start winning from the beginning because guess what? When you were 2 to 3 games back of Toronto and you could have had home field advantage in that last game at Seattle, you were 2 to 3 games back. Why? Because you lost those games earlier in the season. They mean just as much earlier in the season as they do in the second half. Now, let me talk about the pitching rotation. The rotation. Who is this year's Logan Evans? Who is this year's Emerson Hancock? Because those were two pitchers that helped the Mariners get through this season, and I think, they were overlooked. I mean, they were very important, especially with the health of Logan Gilbert and the Kirby. They helped bridge the pitching, from the beginning of the season. So who will be this year's Logan Evans, who is great, and Emerson Hancock, because you need those pitchers. Some pitchers going to go down. It's not if, it's when. So you need to supplement that with veterans like Evans and Hancock. Who will be those players?
Well, this year's Emerson Hancock's probably Emerson Hancock.
Yes.
He's still around.
Okay.
Logan Evans, as we know, is out for
He's
the year.
on the shelf, yeah.
But Jonathan Diaz is a guy who's filled in for them in spots. I think he's back with Tacoma after
He's a
clearing
nice,
waivers.
crafty lefty, right?
He can
fine,
give them a start here or there if he need to.
Tommy Malone type vibes.
They're probably still one extra arm short, but if you're talking about struggling for a 7th starter, you're probably okay.
Well, who has a 7th starter other than the Dodgers?
Yeah, and they pay $750 million a season for it. So no, it is something that you probably need to lean on at some point, but so does almost every other team in baseball has to go to one of those guys, and they're still way better positioned to handle that swoon when it hits than most other teams are.
A lot of teams are trying to figure out who their 4th or 5th starter is. Your 4th or 5th
There's some
starter.
teams that don't have 2.
Exactly. Well, and your 4th or 5th starter could, realistically compete for a Cy Young. Like that's how good the talent is on this roster. Like imagine a fully healthy Bryce Miller. He takes a step. We saw what he can do in the playoffs. I mean, a full season of that.
Yes.
You don't even know who the opening day starter is going to be. Like you can make a case for Logan Gilbert. Luis Castillo's done it in the past. He's probably past his prime. But Brian Wu, what was your horse last year? George Kirby, he has that in him. And Bryce Miller was your best pitcher in the playoffs. Like that's 4 of your 5 guys who you could actually see starting on opening day. I think.
I think
it's a good problem
Logan.
to have.
I think it's probably
Logan. Absolutely. I mean, Brian Wu.
Logan Wu, yeah.
I think it's going to be Gilbert for sure because Wu has that personality, but I don't think it matters to him. He's more of a workman-like pitcher, but Logan Gilbert had it the past 2 seasons. So I think you keep that going. I mean, and then you want to sign him. You want to re-sign him also to a new deal. So I think it will be Logan Gilbert. And I understand the 4th and 5th starters are luxuries, but that helped the Mariners. That propelled them to those playoffs last season. They don't make the playoffs without a Logan Evans. And that might be crazy to say because, like you said, he's the 7th starter. He was back and forth to the minor leagues. But just think about how that season went down. You're gonna need somebody to step up, and I'm just wondering who that player will be.
I think the offense is better positioned to help them through a stretch like that this year than they were last year, and
Great
I think
point.
the bullpen
Great
probably
point.
has a little bit higher ceiling overall too.
Yeah, well, I wanted to get to the bullpen because they added Jose Ferrer in the offseason. So I mean, your top 4 guys are pretty legit. You got Andres Munoz and Matt Brash anchoring the back end of that bullpen. Hopefully, Jose Ferrer has all the stuff, and all reports are they're very happy with what they've seen from him so far. He's a left-hander, correct?
Ferrer?
Yeah, Ferrer.
Yes.
I believe,
yes.
So another power lefty to go along with Gabe Spire, who ran out of gas in the playoffs, as we saw. Those are 4 legit guys, and that's not even touching on Edward Bizardo, who had a breakout year last year. And the reason I put him 5th is because we got to see it from him for another season before we can put him in that category. But that's 5 of your 7 relievers right there. And then Carlos Vargas is a great 6th. We know that he can put together a spectacular inning here and there. If that's your 6th, I mean, this is a pretty deep bullpen as well.
Yeah, and I mean, who's to say that by the time you get to the playoffs too, like they're going to have to keep some of the prospects' innings down, like Cade Anderson and Ryan Sloan. But what if you get to August and you need an arm and you need a guy to go 1 inning? Maybe all of a sudden one of those guys is factoring in down the stretch that you might not think of. And that could be one of your trade deadline additions too, is to go get another high leverage reliever to factor in.
But we were talking about the 6 or 7 starters. Who's going to step up? I mean, when Cade Anderson was drafted, he was the most MLB-ready pitcher in the entire draft. We could fully see him in August or September to take the load off one of the guys. Or
I could see him make spot starts in May, June. Like, I don't know he's going to be able to have the innings to go long enough to be a starter for them late in the year because they're going to want to protect that, given the fact he basically didn't throw after college last year. Right. But, like, that's why I want to throw out the reliever idea. Like, maybe all of a sudden one of these guys comes out and throws out of the bullpen for you down the stretch.
Well, and Ryan Sloan absolutely has the stuff, right?
Well, I wondered if they were going to do that with Sinja at the end of last season. If when they were a little light in the bullpen going into the postseason, if they might do that, and they didn't want to at the time. But maybe this year, one of those guys might factor into doing something like that. I wouldn't rule it out entirely as we head into the start of the season. But one quick note on Ferrer. I was hinting about this with you before the start of the season. So they go and get Ferrer, right? He's mainly a sinker slider, sinker fastball, changeup kind of pitcher. But he also throws a slider. And he threw somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1,150 pitches last year. He only threw the slider 90 times.
Wow.
But that slider has, like, exceptional numbers. It's got a batting average against of 105, expected slugging percentage against of 166, according to Baseball Savant. Like, when he throws it, they don't touch it.
Yeah.
And one thing the Mariners are very good at doing is saying, like, here's the pitch of yours that actually works really well. Throw that. And I think they're going to tell him to throw a lot more sliders this year because the profile of that pitch is like like I said, he threw it 90 times last year. And yeah, like the numbers are just, you got 12 strikeouts with it, 2 hits allowed in 20 plate appearances.
Wow.
So it's a good pitch, and I think they're going to have him throw that a lot. And so I'm curious to see what that looks like when he gets up here.
Wasn't it again? It was either against the Tigers or the Blue Jays where in the playoffs, I mean, the Mariners were just spamming sliders at them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, so that is a pitch they really like, and they develop it very well.
I think it was Detroit because then they had seen like Spire pitch so much over that stretch that all of a sudden, what was it, game 4 or 5 back in Detroit where they I guess it would have been, it was the first series, so it was game 4. So like they hit a bomb off of him, despite the fact that he's really good against lefties.
I have one last question for you, Curtis, about the Mariners. They have 16 players or participants in the WBC, the World Baseball Classic. First, 2-part question: will this help or hurt them? And as far as young players, who can this help? Will this help a Colt Emerson? Will this help a Cole Young when they stay back? So with 16 people participating in the WBC, will this help or hurt the team? And will a young player step up?
I think it hurts anybody who's throwing.
Yeah.
Personally. Like anybody who's pitching, I think it's tough to ramp up and then kind of come back and then get going for the season again. I remember I'm one of the very few people who saw Drew Smyly pitch for the Mariners in person because I was down in spring training for it, several years ago when they signed him. He came in and then needed Tommy John surgery coming out of the WBC and never threw a pitch in a regular season game for the Mariners. I got to see him pitch in Goodyear against the Reds. Wow. And so, like, I guarantee you every team with pitchers participating are probably terrified of that situation. It's going to help anybody who's still in camp while those guys are gone because they're going to get reps with the big team to kind of get more of a look in front of the major league coaches down that they'll be playing for down the line. I don't particularly worry about the offensive players. You know, I think it's just more spring training reps in some regards, hitting, fielding. Like there's nothing super out of the norm for that to me. But to me, it's all the pitchers and the workload on the arms that's going to be the ones where it's probably more detrimental, and every team out there is going to be holding their breath.
Well, and on the point of the offense, Julio Rodriguez was asked about that in his availability like last week, and he was talking about how it's pretty awesome that you're getting these high intensity reps in at-bats in early March. And so he's talking about carrying that into the regular season. Yes. I feel like it can only help those guys to be in those environments. And then any sort of success, think about the confidence that you get from hitting well in spring training. That's going to just be amplified when you go into the regular season and the intensity builds up a little bit. You got a packed T-Mobile Park for opening day and stuff like that. So, I mean, you could sort of compare it to getting playoff reps, but leading into the season. So I feel like it could only help the offensive players.
Offensive players, I agree. If you're a pitcher, I think every team should be scared to death about the injury.
Which led to the decision by Brian Wu to sit out, and I actually agree with that decision. So.
Yeah, and it must have been incredibly hard for him to make because these opportunities.
Scooble's only going to pitch one game, right? And then coming back, he's pitching against Great Britain, which, oof. Sorry, Harry
good luck.
Ford.
Yeah, good luck, Harry Ford. All right. Well, that is the Mariners. WBC is going to be very interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. Let's go over to the Kraken. Curtis, we got to talk Kraken with you.
Kraken?
They are back today from the lengthy Olympic break. They come out of the break in a playoff spot. They are tied for third place in the division. Right now, they are 3 points above that chasing wild card team and only 5 points back of first place, but in a very weak Pacific Conference. Curtis, just 26 games left, 5 games left to the trade deadline. Tell me about the situation the Kraken are in right now.
I think they're in a situation where they very much want to make a postseason push, but there are some, with the trade deadline looming, there's some contract issues they need to figure out what they want to do with. Jaden Schwartz, Jordan Eberle, Ellie Tolvanen, and Jamie Alexiak are all unrestricted free agents at the end of the season. And I don't know that I would expect all of them to be back here for the long term. So the question is, do you move one of those guys out, knowing it's going to take something off of your roster now to get something that could probably help you in the future? Because I don't know if you're going to do a one-for-one player move for somebody that's going to come in and immediately contribute. There is that. I think it's easier to assume it's going to be a draft pick coming back in those circumstances. But I do think they want to make that playoff push, and they're playing well enough to do it, mainly because their goaltending and defense have been pretty good throughout the season. They're still lacking the offensive game when all's said and done, the high-end offensive talent as a part of their roster, but they have made some strides as the season comes along here. They were playing quite well going into the break. I think they won 6 of their last 8 games heading into the Olympic break. So the question is, do you just let it ride out, with somebody, let's say a Schwartz and an Eberle, if you're not able to get contract extensions done with either one of them before the trade deadline, to let it play out and make a push with the group you have, and then just take the cap space you'll get on the back end to use that as your upside? Or do you really feel like you need to get something in trade for it? You might be able to do both. You might be able to move one guy, bring another piece in to help this team too. You might be able to buy and sell at the deadline to kind of augment the roster a little bit. But between that and the fact that you've got Berkeley Catton, and Matt Murray, and a couple guys healthy on injured reserve ready to come back too, there's a roster crunch in a couple different ways for this team, and it's felt like for most of the season, even after the Mason Marchment deal, like there's still like one forward heavy, from like the mid, like the middle 6 kind of guys, like the guys that are making some money. Because like they might have to send Jacob Melanson back down to Coachella Valley, and when he's been on the roster, he's provided a massive spark for them. And so they're in this little bit of a roster crunch moment right now that I'm really curious to see what they're able to do over the next 5 games into the deadline to know where they're going to go with things.
Where would you lean if you were Jason Botterill, if you had to step into his office and take his job? How you
going to give Curtis the job?
I fully trust Curtis with the job.
He just hired you, Curtis.
I absolutely I absolutely trust Curtis with the job. GM Curtis, what would you do? Because you sort of have this balancing act of, if you go for it with the playoffs, all these expiring contracts, you make the playoffs, be a first round exit. You got worse draft position versus if you sell off. Is this team good enough to actually potentially compete for a Stanley Cup right now?
No, they're not.
Or is it worth getting a better draft position?
They're not a Stanley Cup competitor right now. But I do think 5 years in, they want to make the playoffs and create some momentum, more momentum for the franchise in general. I do think that it matters to them to make the playoffs right now. And they're fully capable of being a playoff team. And, I mean, they're a well-rounded enough roster where they can probably cause some
once you win,
problems
you can win.
to, anybody except for maybe Colorado once they get there. I think it can be a tough out for them if that's – I think if you can avoid playing Colorado, I think you'll feel okay about where you're at. Yeah. Particularly if you're able to finish second or third in the division, you're going to play the other person from the division. You can find your way in the second round pretty easily because I don't think the Pacific Division's all that stacked right now. That being said, that second team might be Edmonton and Connor McDavid, so that would be a tough ask there. In its own
dry
right.
saddle.
Yeah, I mean they have their upside too. Don't get me wrong, but I think I would lean more towards still, and I'm not worried about the draft picks so much. I think they've drafted enough. They've got talent load in their system right now for the long haul with enough draft picks that they've built up and all that. They can't draft another 20 guys and throw them in the system because they don't have enough contract spots for that to go anyway. So I'm not super concerned about adding more future capital right now. But I still don't know that this team's worth, investing something major in. There was reports that they were really trying to get Artemi Panarin from the Rangers here before the winter break, and I don't know that I necessarily liked that fit for them. Panarin's a good player. I don't personally love his game like all that much. He's a good player. I just don't know that I would invest in that at this point. So he goes to and they wouldn't have got the deal of the Kings game anyway. That's what he had no trade protection, so he could dictate where he wanted to go, and it was a lesser deal than Seattle would have had to give up for him. I think I would still probably not go all in on this right now because I just don't think there's the ceiling there for them to make a massive run. But I do think making the playoffs is reasonable, and they should try to do it.
Yes, and I don't think this team has championship expectations. I agree with you, Curtis. But this team, and make no mistake, must make the playoffs. They must make the playoffs. They have no choice, or they run the prospect of losing the fan base, if you ask me. This team had the city on fire when they were introduced, and they make it in their second year, and now it just seems like they're on a decline right now, and they're losing equity with the fans, I would say. You have to make the playoffs if you're the Kraken this year. It is no other choice but to make it. So you don't have to give away the farm, and championship expectations are not there, but playoffs for sure.
That Colorado team is so good. The one thing I'd put, I don't see the point of making it as the 8th seed. Because I just don't think they can compete with Colorado. That team is outstandingly good, and going in and getting swept out in 4, losing in 5. I don't know that does necessarily a ton for you, but I think they can do more than that. I don't think they're just trying to scrape in as the last team in because when they've played well, they've played very well. Mason Marchment did not work out here, and their record in games where he's not been on the roster is significantly better than the ones where he was. And when they've put this fourth line together with Ben Myers and Ryan Winterton and Jacob Melanson, they've brought an energy to that group. It's one reason why you saw 2 of them signed to extensions yesterday because that group has really kind of propelled things forward. Melanson's physical. He'll lay hits on guys. He's still got the skill to do some things offensively too. Ben Myers was a highly touted high school prospect out of Minnesota that hasn't quite found it at the NHL level, but he can do some things. He's been a nice piece, and Winterton's in his first full season in the NHL has really kind of come along too. So when I said they felt like they're one middle 6 guy heavy, that's what I'm talking about. There's guys there that can contribute, and if all of a sudden you're needing to put one of their, I'm blanking who the third guy on injured reserve is right now. But there's another piece.
Ben Myers?
Myers might still be on IR. So let's put Myers back in the lineup and say they have to pput Melanson back in Coachella. I don't like that. I would rather have Melanson keep playing because they've been going very well. They haven't wanted to lose Ty Cartier, but you could put him on waivers too to try to get that roster spot to keep Melanson in the lineup otherwise. So that's when I said there's some roster decisions they need to make. Matt Murray's felt like he's been a day away from getting activated for about 2 months now.
Well, and maybe that's something where they're just protecting him by keeping on IR because you got 2 number 1s in Decord and Grudy.
Well, it is, but theoretically, when you're healthy, you should have to be activated.
Right.
So I'm curious if they're able to stretch it out another 5 games to get to the deadline. Now all of a sudden there's a roster spot open and it frees things up and all of that. So. I think that's why, at least from a roster decision heading into the deadline, it's really curious to see what they do here and how much they try to augment this roster. It seems like they're willing to take a swing and add some big piece at some point, whether it's now or over the offseason. And they should. It's time for them to start looking to do that. They have the assets in the system where they can look to do that too. They still need guys in their team already, like guys like Matty Beniers, who's come on a bit heading into the break. Shane Wright did a little bit too last week and change going into the break. Berkeley Cattons look like his game's come along as the season's gone around. You're going to still have to have some of your own homegrown players start to ascend. And I think you're starting to see some of that, particularly with the fourth line guys I'm talking about. But they still need a frontline scorer, and I don't know that they've got that imminently in the system unless Berkeley Catton becomes that.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Panarin because I wanted to ask you about that, and it does seem like they are willing to take a swing if that that was what they were trying to do. It sounds like that wouldn't have been like the top line scorer that they were looking for.
He is more of an offensive player. Don't get me wrong.
But also they were going to give up Shane Wright. How do you feel about them sort of throwing in the towel on Shane Wright?
It depends on. I'm willing to use him as a trade chip. It just depends on which piece you're getting. And for Panarin, I don't know that. That's what I was kind of getting at.
Okay, gotcha.
I don't know that I would have loved it specifically for Artemi Panarin, who is a very solid, good player. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
He's put up some really productive offensive seasons in the past. I just, with where he is in his career, I don't know that I would have committed to him for the fit of what I don't know that he's the high end scorer that they want. I think he benefited from a lot of the pieces that you had around him in New York. And I just don't trust what the LA Kings are doing at all. So I'm like, if you're getting him, it's probably a mistake, is my kind of thought.
Right.
So it's just kind of the general, my own personal bias on a player. I just don't particularly absolutely love Panarin as a player, so I don't think I would have gone that way.
How high is your threshold then for Shane Wright? I mean, he's 22, former number 4
I thought
overall
it was
pick.
great coming into this year, and he just hasn't done it this season for whatever reason.
I mean, just the 22 points over halfway through the season. He had 44 points last year.
He looked so good at the end of last season. It felt like things were really going to take off and ascend, and maybe it's because of the defensive system that Lane Lambert's put in place, which is one reason why they are here, because they were an absolute train wreck defensively a season ago.
Yeah. And Wright's getting under 14 minutes of ice time, so he's not even out there.
Some of that is that for sure. But also, I think he's had the opportunity to create that ice time and hasn't necessarily done it as well.
Yeah.
Why does it seem like he gets judged a little bit more harshly than Beniers? Because if you ask me, Shane Wright, towards the end of last season, he was more promising than any season I got from Matt Beniers. Why isn't he Beniers in conversation?
Because that was last year. It hasn't been that way this year. Matty Beniers has been playing really good hockey for the last month and change.
They gave him a chance. They gave him some grace.
Well, he's their first line center. He deserves.
He's
the
always
chance.
had.
He's an exceptional defensive two-way center.
Yeah.
It's just the offensive points haven't been there.
It's when he's not showing up in the box score. He's still doing the dirty work.
And so being their first line center, who's he playing against every night? McDavid, the top McKinnon, the top guys in the league. He's so far on the defensive end of the ice. He's good at kind of handling that on a defensive role. Shane Wright, they still try to shelter him a little bit more on the third line and having him from a defensive standpoint too. And I think he's focused so much on the defensive side of the game that the offensive side of the game just hasn't been there. So there's a reason Matty Beniers plays where he does and Shane Wright has played where he does. But Shane Wright, I thought last year had more offensive upside than Beniers did too. And then this year that offensive side has not followed. It's not produced at the same level it did last year, and maybe some systems is part of the reason for that, or maybe it's just kind of where Shane is at. He's kind of stagnated here, and maybe that's why they're considering moving him for something else.
Well, just 5 games left until the trade deadline. The trade deadline's next Friday. I mean, it is coming up right out of this Olympic break, so we will see. There's going to be a lot of stuff coming down next couple of weeks for the Kraken in the NHL. All right, we got to be quick on this last segment. It's a new segment for us. It's called Austin Asks. You all know Austin Lane, our incredible producer. He has come up with 3 questions for us. The format's supposed to be like a nuts and bolts sports question, sort of a fun sports question, then a wild card third question. So we'll roll through these. Question 1, Austin asks, Dante, I'll start with you on this one. What grade do you give the Mariners offseason?
I give it a B+. Would give it an A, but I got to see the players perform. I love the moves they made, but it's still a big bat move to be made, and it's also a big arm to be made out there, and they would have an A. But a B+, and you teetering on an A, that's the grade I give him.
Curtis?
I'll say a solid B, and it would have been a plus to an A- if they'd gotten a Logan Gilbert contract extension done as well. That's like the one other thing I would have liked to see them get done this offseason.
I like that answer. I'm going to go with an A. It would have been, I don't know what would have made it an A+. Maybe getting a Ketel Marte, but I feel like Brendan Donovan is just the perfect fit for what this lineup needs. You went and got the infield bat in Brendan Donovan. You got Josh Naylor done. That had to happen. And you got Jose Ferrer in a bullpen arm. I sort of wanted, going into the offseason, wanted them to get more of a solidified bullpen arm, maybe like buying low on a Devon Williams or something like that, a guy who's been there, done that. But I really like what they got in Ferrer. And coming from the left side of the mound also is a benefit as well to supplement Gabe Spire. Question 2, Austin asks, would you do this deal? The Seahawks re-sign Ken Walker to a 3-year deal, but in 3 years, they don't have enough money to re-sign Gray Zabel. Obviously, very hypothetical. We're talking about 2 different timelines, but Curtis, would you do that deal?
Literal answer is probably no. I think you can find the running back some way, somehow. But that being said, I don't think any contract done now is going to affect 3 years from now. If they want to keep both of them, there's no issue with keeping both of them. It's just kind of the way things are going to play out here.
I would say not just no, but heck no. You know, that's the kid-friendly version of it. You talking about the game is won in the trenches.
Yeah.
Didn't Mike McDonald prove that, and the Seahawks proved that this season when they hoisted the Lombardi? The game is won in the trenches, and the running back, they tell us is a dime a dozen. I don't believe that because I think Ken Walker is special. He is a game breaker, but Gray Zabel is special also. He was a rookie. He's probably all rookie this year. He helped solidify that offensive line who will be been crying for 10 years. We need an offensive line. The game is won in the trenches. It's a no for me.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with an absolutely not. I think it's a lot easier to replace running backs. Running backs more replaceable than good offensive linemen.
Yes.
And I completely agree with you, Dante. The game is won in the trenches. We saw that this year. The first thing that Mike McDonald did when he got in here is we need to defend the run in the trenches. They were able to achieve that and sort of build. Think about the differences in how that Seahawks defense was built in the LOB, from the defensive front back as opposed to the secondary back in.
Question for you: what number does Gray Zabel wear?
76.
What number did Steve Hutchinson wear?
Is it 76?
Yeah, you can't let this be Steve Hutchinson again. You got to make sure you take care of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Final question. Austin asks, what is the best month to be a sports fan and why? Dante,
I would say it used to be March for me simply because of March Madness, but right now I would say October.
Okay.
And it's strictly because
that's fun to say as a Mariners fan.
That's exactly what I was about to say, Ethan. It's strictly because of the Mariners, the expectations. You expect them to be playing in October. You have the NBA just starting, NHL just starting. You have college basketball, NFL football is going on. You can't turn on your TV and a game or a match is not on right there. So October is the month. There's no other answer.
Curtis?
Yeah, it's easily October. Unless you're looking for a specific sport some other where in the calendar, like you can get, I think, all 4 of the major sports. And not only that, but MLS is going then too.
Yep. MLS playoffs are just starting then.
Yeah, like there's college football's going on then. It's definitely October has the most things kind of hitting at the same time. If you're into NASCAR, that's kind of playoff times for them too. Like on the racing schedule, same thing with F1. It's getting to the end of this. Like there's so many things happening at that part in the calendar of the year, just in general. It's got to be October, regardless of how things are going here. Like there's just so many things happening in October. I know because I don't get any sleep in October.
You guys are gonna zig. I'm gonna zag. I'm gonna go with April. Actually, I think October was my number 2, but
April
in April,
Fools? Is that what you're doing?
man, come on, God. The MLB season starting for me in April is always one of the more exciting times. The entire calendar for me. October's incredible for baseball as well, but normally the Mariners aren't in it. April is, you're just like watching baseball every single day, and it's just so much new information on what the team is going to look like. You also have the Final Four for March Madness, so you get a little bit of that March in there as well. My Zags, hopefully you're going to be in it this year.
Hopefully they miss.
Come on, Curtis. God. Curtis, I don't know if I can have you on. You got the Masters. That one's for you. You got the Masters going on in April. You got the NFL drafts. You got some football in there as well. The NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs also begin in April.
Starting
Yeah,
April,
so you got a lot of playoff activity going on, even though you don't have the baseball playoffs. So April for me, you got to get college basketball. I'm not really a big college football guy. I'm a big college basketball guy. So for me, I lean April over October. But Austin, thank you so much for the questions. We're gonna be trying to do that every week. So
Yes.
that's gonna do it for this edition of the On the Sidelines podcast. Curtis, anything final to add? What do we got? Final word from Curtis Crabtree.
Zags suck.
Come on. All right. Okay. Let's get out of here. For Curtis, Dante, I'm Ethan. See you next time on the Sidelines.
Let's go!
On the Sidelines is available wherever you get your podcast.